Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Aishwarya Sophia. I'm an Akashic channel and an energy healer, and I'm here to make your spiritual journey a little bit easier. Let's talk about inner child healing. Welcome back to the last part of my Soul Healing Basics series. So this series was a 3-part series where I spoke about what I think are the basics of soul healing. So I touched on self-love and shadow work, and those 2 videos are already up. I'll link them at the end of this video so you can catch up on those if you haven't watched them already. And in this video, we're going to talk about our inner child. Our inner child is that part of us that holds on to childhood memories, experiences, and feelings. This is usually present in our emotional body, and it has a direct effect on our interpersonal relationships, how we are able to regulate our emotions, and how we handle stressful situations as an adult. This is the part of us that was formed in early childhood. So to heal our inner child, what we must do is reparent this aspect of ourselves. Reparenting your inner child requires nurturing and emotional care to really fill those emotional voids that are present from any unmet needs that we felt as a child. It's really about offering yourself that love and care that you felt that you lacked in your formative years so that you can feel whole and complete as an adult. I'm now going to give you 7 tangible ways that you can reparent your inner child. The first way is to really connect with your inner child and gain its trust. Now, this might be the longest part of this process because once you get in touch with your inner child, the healing becomes very second nature. It becomes very easy and seamless. But what you want to do is first really sit down in a quiet space and connect with your inner child, right? Now, the best way to do this is sit in a quiet space, close your eyes, and just remember what it felt like to be a child. And you can choose any age that was most impactful for you. For me, it was around age 6. And I always, when I first started connecting with my inner child, I would close my eyes and invoke my 6-year-old self. So I would address her by the name that my family calls me. And I would just call her in, have her sit with me, and I would visualize all of this, right? And I really started to connect with that aspect of myself in that way. And what you can do once you establish this connection is you can ask your inner child, what can I do to make you happy? What would you like to do today? So whatever you would do to really gain a child's trust through stability, through consistency, through love, compassion, and do that with your inner child. And once you start practicing this trust, right, something magical happens. And this usually happens after just a few weeks of doing this because much like any child, your inner child wants to know that you are a dependable and stable adult. So start developing those qualities of dependability and stability, especially emotional stability. And that's how you really get to know your inner child and you gain its trust. Once you do this, go a step further and identify what your childhood trauma is. So it can be a host of different things, but mainly it's going to be 1 or 2 core wounds. So let's just use an example. If someone has an abandonment wound and a neglect wound, then that manifests in the inner child, which means as an adult, we always will attract people who will give us that same or trigger that same abandonment wound. So if you need help with identifying your childhood trauma, look at your repeating cycles and patterns and look at where you felt inadequate or left behind or let down as a child. Once you identify this trauma, sit with it. You're going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. You might relive some of this trauma, but trust me, don't distract yourself at this point, because anytime you distract yourself, you bury that trauma deeper. We don't want that. We want to extract it and release it forever, right? So stay focused and sit with that discomfort and validate your feeling. For me, I remember that my mother used to drop me off at school, and she wouldn't wait at the gate till I went into my classroom. And this was, for some strange reason, one of my biggest triggers. And to this day, we talk about it and we laugh about it. I always make fun of my mom that she would say, "I'll be right here," and she'd leave. So that caused a deep fear of abandonment within me. So when I first identified this, I was so mad at my mom. I was like, how could she do this, right? And I was so upset that this was done. And I just sat with it. Just sat with the feeling, felt the discomfort, felt the pain, felt the betrayal, felt the abandonment, right? And I validated myself, because as a 4-year-old, your mom is your entire world. So everything they do is blown up, right? So I had to give myself that validation that even though it was something so seemingly small, it was a big deal to my inner child. So connecting with your inner child, gaining their trust, identifying exactly what trauma you went through as a child, and validating yourself is the first step to open the gates of communication with your inner child. The next way is one of my favorites. It's to write letters to your inner child. And this can be like friendly letters, it can be emotional, you can pour your heart out, whatever you feel called to do, just write to your inner child. So what I do is sometimes I write letters of appreciation. Let's say that I've had an extra long work week, right? And I've done really well. My inner child has cooperated with me. My inner teen has cooperated with me. And that's when I feel like, you know what? I could not have done this. I couldn't have had so much fun and joy creating what I create without the support of my inner child. So that's when I write letters of appreciation, or I'll buy my inner child a treat. So it can be something that you enjoyed as a child, but mainly writing letters to your inner child fosters that connection between you and your inner child. Now, mind you, your inner child is you, right? But what we're trying to subtly differentiate here is the energetics of it. So your inner child, like I said, it's that part of you that still holds on to these unmet needs. So while you're reparenting your inner child, all you need to do is really love and care for that aspect of yourself that felt like it had unmet needs. And that's what really heals the inner child. You can also write letters to validate what you went through, saying, I understand what you went through. You can write a letter to reassure your inner child that I'm the adult in your life, so no one can hurt you anymore. But whatever it is, writing letters to your inner child is a very potent way to communicate with it. The next one, again, one of my favorites, is to make time for play, right? And really, this leads into a larger concept, which is create a life of joy. Now, many of us have very stressful jobs, we have families we have to take care of, responsibilities, and that's all well and good, right? We're here for it. We're responsible adults and we will take care of it. But the question is, are we doing it with joy? Because it's not enough if we're just surviving. We're here to thrive. And what happens when you don't enjoy your everyday is that it slowly starts affecting your system. Now, I find this fascinating because Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about this, of how your everyday thoughts really affect your system. But when I read his book, Becoming Supernatural, that's when I started realizing, wait, creating a joyful environment and making time for play goes so much farther and so much deeper than just the inner child, which is why I've even mentioned this in my self-love video, because creating that atmosphere of joy and peace and serenity around you can really add to your quality of life and improve your mental health a great deal. So definitely think of ways that you can make your life more easy and joyful, and this will set the stage for your inner child to come more into your conscious awareness because it feels safe to do that. Another beautiful way you can connect with your inner child and reparent it is by having a weekly inner child ritual, right? So for me, what this looks like is really sitting with my inner child and appreciating the hell out of it. Because for whatever reason, I feel like that's what I lacked. I lacked appreciation and affection. So I give myself appreciation and affection in an abundance now. And it's just creating that space to sit with my inner child, right? And say, this time is for me and my connection with my inner child. I'm not going to worry about anything else. Just doing this and making a weekly ritual out of it, maybe lighting some incense and maybe just getting yourself something nice to eat and making an evening out of it. So developing a weekly ritual like this really shows your inner child how important it is to you, and it allows that space, right? So for example, if you're going to do this every Thursday from 4 to 5 p.m., your inner child knows that you're going to show up for it no matter what every Thursday 4 to 5 p.m. So it really fills that void that many of us had as kids, that we weren't given enough attention or given enough appreciation or any of that. So this weekly ritual really shows your inner child that you are dependable, that you're stable, and that you're going to show up for your inner child no matter what. And I really find these weekly inner child rituals to be so sweet and comforting. So that leads me to my next point, which is creating a safe space for your inner child. So how do you create a safe space for your inner child? Think about it as a regular child. If you had a 6-year-old daughter, how would you create a safe space for her, right? It's a very easy exercise. Put your inner child outside of yourself, view them as a child, and then ask yourself, what would I do to create a safe atmosphere for this little girl? So if I were to ask myself that question, I would immediately think, create and enforce good boundaries for her. Make sure that she's always well fed and clean and taken care of. Make sure that she's happy and emotionally fulfilled and nurtured, right? Things like this. So write this down and actually start practicing it. When a child, or especially your inner child, has a safe atmosphere, that's when they thrive. Because kids are so creative. So if you have your inner child living in an atmosphere where you're always being self-critical, its genius is not going to be turned on. But if you create an atmosphere for your inner child where all of its crazy, quirky ideas are met with love and appreciation, all of the little things it does to support you are met with love and appreciation. Any mistakes your inner child may make, you're not deeply critical of it, right? You just learn from it and move on. So when you really create this safe atmosphere for your inner child to thrive in, that's when it comes out to play. And I think that a lot of our genius is within our inner child, because children are so uninhibited, and this is that part of ours that's uninhibited. The next thing is so crucial to any healing journey. It is to set and enforce healthy boundaries. So going back to step 2, when I spoke about really identifying some of the triggers and trauma that you had as a child, if one of those is, say, people pleasing, right? Then really think of, how can I stop doing that by setting better boundaries? So whatever it may be, these boundaries I'm talking about will tie into the trauma that you identified earlier. So once you identify your trauma, you can understand where you need better boundaries, where you need to speak up more, where you maybe need to be quieter and softer with someone. Maybe you're being too harsh with someone, right? It can go either way. But what I'm trying to get at here is to really think of where you, specifically for yourself, need to set better boundaries to feel safe within your own being. Once you're able to answer this question, so for example, if you're a people pleaser, then that means that you have to put your needs ahead of others. So once you identify what that boundary is, practice, practice, practice. Every chance you get, enforce that boundary. Set the boundary, enforce it, right? And after you do it a few times, it becomes second nature and comes to you so naturally that if someone crosses that boundary, you immediately go like, you just crossed my boundary. So setting and enforcing solid boundaries is very essential to reparenting your inner child. And please know that you don't have to be combative or aggressive to do this at all. You can set and enforce your boundaries in complete peace, and don't give your power away by reacting when someone breaches a boundary. Just very calmly enforce it again and again and again. And trust me, if you persist, you will be successful in enforcing your boundaries. This last one is very effective in reparenting your inner child, and it's to treat yourself how you want others to treat you, right? So if you want others to hear you out and not interrupt you, allow yourself to speak without being interrupted. If you want others to see how kind and gracious you are, show that kindness and graciousness more. But whatever it is, treat yourself the same way that you want others to treat you. So if you think that, I wish others would treat me with more respect, identify how you can treat yourself with more respect. Because if we are not able to create a feeling within ourselves, it's very difficult for us to experience it from another person. And oftentimes, even if we experience this feeling from another person, if we haven't created it within ourselves, we don't even know when we see it. So it's very important to create these emotions of trust, of acceptance, of love, of respect within yourself, and then expect others to treat you the same way. So if you create these feelings within yourself, others will be able to reflect that back to you. Reparenting your inner child requires patience and time. And like I've said in my previous 2 videos as well, this is a lifestyle. So think of ways that you can incorporate some of these simple practices that I've shared into your life. And before you know it, you will be an expert at reparenting your inner child. If you would like an inner child healing session, check out my website. If you would like a fun reading about your ancestral lineage, which can uncover a lot about your inner child patterns and trauma, check out my Etsy and you'll find an ancestral lineage reading there. If you feel called to work with me in any way, feel free to reach out to me by email, or you can follow me on Instagram. I really hope that this series was helpful. I definitely enjoyed making it. And leave your thoughts and comments below. Like this video if you thought that it was helpful. Thank you so much, and I will see you in my next one. Namaste.